we can hold sorrow with joy at the same time, right? Like we feel pain and sadness for what's happening in LA, but I'm feeling happy right now being with you at the same time, having
Yeah.
these deep conversations. And one thing that we're not taught in our society when we become mothers is that we can be more than one thing. Can we just stop for a moment and see it all and witness it so that we can see that we are worthy? And I get the unworthiness deeply. I'm still undoing that. Unfortunately, the moment came when my son had his break. That was the moment that I went on this journey of self pity and self despair in the darkness, the heroine's journey. The mother has to decide to take that dive off the cliff and go into the despair and figure out how to claw her way out. We have to want it. It is our birthright to have love and joy and happiness.
Welcome to Atypical Kids, Mindful Parents, a neurodiversity affirming podcast for parents of neurodivergent kids of all ages. I'm Kate Lynch, a mindfulness coach on a mission to create a kinder, more inclusive world. If you're a highly sensitive parent navigating the joys and struggles of raising your unique kids, follow us for episodes filled with grounding mindfulness practices, relatable stories, and empowering strategies. A 5-star review helps more parents find this podcast so they can also feel less alone. I'm really excited to introduce Shelley Karpaty to all of you. She is a writer, meditation guide, and mental health advocate. Shelley is committed to learning by doing, by writing, by meditating, by breathing life into each space with presence, vulnerability, authenticity to reduce stigma. Shelley's writing a memoir, which I hope to hear more about. I know that you're going to get so much out of this conversation because her specialty is holding space for parents of neurodivergent children for supportive healing. So, Shelley, thank you so much for being on Atypical Kids, Mindful Parents podcast. I can't wait to talk with you. And I'm grateful that you're willing to talk with our listeners about some of your parenting experiences, especially with raising your child who was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Is that right?
Yeah. Which is a hard word to say and to use, but thank you for acknowledging that. Labels are hard, right? So I just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of stigma that just goes with that label itself.
Mm.
So if you want to talk about what that means, maybe people are interested because oftentimes when they hear that word, it just sends people into fear.
Mhm.
And I just want to acknowledge that, like being on the autistic spectrum, there are also variations of being on the schizophrenia spectrum. Psychosis can be temporary. And while he still holds this label because it's what the doctors say, my son is very high functioning. He drives, he makes his own meals, he does his own laundry, he cleans his room, he has held part-time jobs. He just enrolled in a couple of classes, computer programming and automotive technician. So he's in the world. And while he is isolated, that's one of the characteristics is isolation and being alone and just being in your own world and playing video games and just feelings, everything, like being a high empath, highly sensitive person, yet inability to put words to those feelings, as well as build consistent relationships and knowing when to pull back and knowing when to engage and knowing how to ask people questions to keep the conversation going. So, I just really wanted to explain that while it's been a 9-year journey and while I could use that word for the beginning of his journey, I have a really hard time using it right now because of everything that I've just described. So I
Yeah.
just want people to know that it's not a life sentence.
And it sounds like from previous conversations we've had, you've noticed some traits that parallel autism.
Yeah, like the being highly sensitive to energy and people's body language. And like sometimes if I'm in the kitchen and I'm cleaning and I'm upset about something else and he comes in the room, he might think that I'm upset with him when it has nothing to do with him, or the inability to have back and forth conversation and putting words to his feelings. Yeah. And having long-term relationships and friendships has been difficult.
And can you give us like a timeline, like the age of you have 2 kids, right?
Yeah, I have a 19-year-old daughter who is sophomore in college, and my son who's 22 who lives with us now. And I've been in this journey since he was 14.
What do you remember from what your son was like before age 14?
Oh, he's still that same person,
Mm.
honestly, like the heart of who he is, kind and sweet and sensitive and a little bit introverted. Yeah, definitely introverted. He was a kid that always was smiling, and we were really close, and we did lots of activities together. He had a group of friends, but definitely there's the adolescent, pubescent time was very difficult. And I think between the hormones and lack of sleeping and just being stressed out about social and academic regular things, just it became a perfect storm. And I do have my theories on why it happened because it doesn't run in the family and he wasn't having experimental drug use. As a mother, knowing her child and knowing and having that intuition and that gut instinct is really important to listen to. I have fought for many tests. I've fought for many different modalities in healing. And I could say that my case is I'm quite lucky in the sense of where we are, not where we were, but where we are now is actually a very good place to be. And I'm grateful for that. And so I like to support other people on their journey. Some people will never get out of the journey. And I really acknowledge that. But every case is so very different. The mind body connection is different for everyone.
I love hearing how you're contributing now by interviewing other parents. So if you'd like to talk about
Yeah.
that, I think it helps with the isolation so much.
It does, yeah. In the beginning, I did go to NAMI, NAMI, National Association of Mental Illness, as a first place. That's where always like the hospitals and doctors send you when they know that you're going to be on this journey of mental illness. And it was helpful in the beginning, but honestly, this journey has been sprinkled with some really amazing people and helpers that have come to me. And when I entered in to the 2-year mindfulness certification program with Jack Cornfield, we were placed in small mentor groups. And out of the 800 people that were in this program, I was placed in a small group of 6 other participants. And one of the women was a therapist, and her son had the same diagnosis. She led this parent support group with this organization called MAD in America. MAD in America covers science, psychiatry, and social justice issues around this. And it's very powerful stuff. As I started going to these support groups and hearing other parents' stories talking about their journeys of simply going into the inferno, I listened and held space alongside my dear friend Louisa. I started to interview them because I've learned time and time again that mothers are not heard, they're not believed, they're not part of the solution. And I just felt that all of their stories should be told. So I've written about a half dozen stories. And if there's any listener that wants to tell their story that is around mental illness and being a mother and the challenges that they've had, then I would be very happy to interview them.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. So you mentioned inferno.
Yeah.
And that word reminded me of what's happening right now. And I want us to be able to name it, even if this podcast comes out and it's a memory for people, because these memories are still trauma memories and they're
Yeah.
cultural and they don't just disappear and we don't just go back to normal.
Yeah. So what's happening in Los Angeles right now is really near and dear to me. It's 2.5 miles away from where I live. I have a lot of friends and some family that live there. Thankfully, everybody that I know has been safe. Of course, they're impacted I know that Los Angeles will come back strong. They're a city that will pull together. I think that rebuilding will take a long time, but from a spiritual perspective, and I don't mean this to spiritually bypass at all, but metaphorically, I feel that we're in a time in our lives, starting from 9/11 all the way to we've had these moments, the 9/11, the pandemic, and now this. Of course, I'm not naming the other floods and natural disasters, but it shows us that we have to come together. Everything is interconnected, and we all live on this same planet Earth. And none of us are getting out of here alive. So why don't we help one another? There is enough abundance of everything for everyone. I know that there is societal, social constructs and economic constructs that prevent people from having things. And that is also the same with mental health. It's all systemic. I hope that this will burn down all the systemic bullshit and rebuild to say, look, like we have to come together and support one another. Why not just be kind and get out of your egos and just see what's really happening?
I have students and colleagues in Asheville, North Carolina. That area
Yes.
was so recently decimated.
Yes.
It feels if we're really plugged in to all that's happening in the world, and if we're highly sensitive, then how can we maintain any semblance of sanity whatsoever? I'm
Yeah.
serious. Like
Yeah.
when we're impacted by these kind of threat states all the time. I remember during the pandemic and also during 9/11, just feeling those two were especially impactful on me. I had a deeper emotional connection to both of those, where my childhood fears and feelings of instability were re-triggered quite a lot,
Right.
especially during COVID. I'd been teaching yoga for over 20 years already, and I had so many tools to deal with my triggers. But it was just it was like I couldn't keep up. So it does have to be interpersonal, like
Mhm.
amongst us. It has to be about our culture, about our communities,
Mhm.
and it has to be systemic.
Yes. And
Otherwise,
that's
we're just
key.
playing catch up all the time, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we really have to set those boundaries. And one thing that I always tell the parents that I work with is that we just have to put our oxygen mask on first, no matter what's happening, whatever that looks like, whether it be sitting in silence for a few minutes, whether it be just putting your feet on the earth. I found some really weird tools for myself when I was going through the beginning of my son's illness. Weird things like I would watch foreign TV because I had to focus on reading the subtitles and nothing
Mm.
else. So the story had to be really riveting. I watched like a Japanese reality show. I watched historical drama that took place in, I think it was Turkey. I took super long walks with my dog and listened to uplifting podcasts because what we focus on expands, right? So where our attention flows, our energy goes. Those sayings really are true. I can't listen to too much music with words anymore. I have to listen to binaural beats, like that music that you hear when you're in the spa or you're getting a massage and you hear beautiful nature sounds or certain frequency music really helps me a lot. It helps ground me. So we got to use the tools and we need Sangha, right? So we have to sit with other people because we need to create the goodness together.
I'm curious if your memoir is about your experience with your son.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, the book that I'm writing, there is some of my writing that will contribute to the book that's on my publication now, Spicy Soul Mama on Substack.
Mhm.
But the book itself is the memoir of my journey as a mother and coming back to myself through this journey of psychosis and changing it into the framework of this didn't happen to me, it happened for me, and working through my own healing so that I can be the best person I can be for my son and help him on his journey.
The idea of putting your oxygen mask on first, maybe because I'm in this space, same as you, of supporting parents with mindfulness, it feels really cliche at this point. And I still, no matter how many times we hear it, I don't know any parent who feels really comfortable actually doing that.
Yeah.
Even though it is the right and safe thing to do. Like if you were actually on a plane with your family, it would be
Yeah.
the right and safe thing to do. When it comes to using that as an analogy for self-care, I don't think that we're there yet
Yeah.
culturally in our programming.
I know that's such a great point. And so, where do you think the resistance is? I know it's this deep embedded patriarchal programming, right? That especially for mothers, where a lot of our work is unpaid, so we're not valued. But I decided that it's an internal, I think, heart-based decision that we have to choose. And sometimes we're forced to choose or we just have to want it.
I think people really want
Yeah, you're right.
to do things that make them feel good.
Mhm.
And there's something that stops us.
Do you think it's
And
guilt?
I've done a lot of deep diving into this, not just with myself, but with my students and with others. And people always talk about time and money, but it's
Yeah,
never about time or money.
it's
Honestly, even
not.
though we have less time as parents, obviously, and less money as parents, and especially as women, we're not paid as much or we're not paid at all. Like you said, there's so much unpaid labor. It's a deeper thing of really worthiness and feeling safe enough to prioritize ourselves. Is it safe to prioritize myself? And if you're anything like me, I was raised that it's only safe to care for others. And
Mm.
if I'm taking care of myself, I'll be seen as selfish, and there's shame around being
Yes,
selfish. And
yes,
then when there's shame, you're getting pushed out of the circle of the hearth, right? The comfort.
yeah.
So we often do, as parents, get re-triggered in that. Like maybe we're great at self-care before we have kids, but then once
Right.
we have kids, it's, oh, now I'm taking on this, often women taking on this archetype
Yes.
that is
Yeah.
selfless.
Yes.
So, how does selflessness align with self care? Is there
Yes.
a way to still be in that archetype of the good mother without being completely selfless? Because selfless leads to burnout.
Yes. I love that you mentioned the archetype because it is so true. And in mindfulness, more than one thing can be true, right?
Yeah.
We can hold sorrow with joy at the same time, right? Like we're having sorrow and we feel pain and sadness for what's happening in LA, but I'm feeling happy right now being with you at the same time, having
Yeah.
these deep conversations. And so I think one thing that we're not taught in our society when we become mothers is that we can be more than one thing. We can hold more than one archetype at the same time. When I became a mother, I think I was 30 when my first child was born, and I lost myself in the motherhood. And then I wanted to go back to work after 2 years. And then I put on the hat of worker bee. And then I come home and I'm the mother. And we're putting on all these roles. And then we forget about our souls, right? We forget
Mm.
about our heart and our journey and who we were before we got married and did all the things. It's so like everyone is living that path. It's just a matter of can we just stop for a moment and see it all and witness it so that we can see that we are worthy. And I get that. I get the unworthiness deeply. I'm still undoing that. And every time I get a rejection from something, I think it's because of my worthiness. But again, it's the reframe. It's not a rejection, it's a redirection. I've just really decided, I've made the decision to believe that in all the things that are happening for us. Like it's this moment. And unfortunately, the moment came when my son had his break that was the moment that I went on this journey of self-pity and self-despair in the darkness, the heroine's journey. The mother has to decide to take that dive off the cliff and go into the despair and figure out how to claw her way out. We have to want it. It is our birthright to have love and joy and happiness. I decided one day I'm going to get up before everybody gets up. I don't care if the kitchen's a mess. I'm going to get up 10 minutes before everybody. I'm going to sit on the cushion. I'm going to listen to Insight Timer or a YouTube video, and I'm going to just breathe, and I'm going to write my affirmations. I get to be here. It's a new day, and anything can happen. And it's really weird. I say this with such conviction, doesn't mean that it happens all the time, but I believe it.
Right.
And I have a much better day when I do.
That makes so much sense. And okay, so this is what was coming up for me. First of all, when you were saying two things are true, I was cheering because I'm involved with Dr. Becky's Good Inside community. I don't know if you've heard of it, but she talks a lot about two things are true. She takes a lot of the mindful parenting wisdom and distills it into these little sound bites that are really good on Instagram. And tells people exactly what to do if this is happening. She's really good at that, which I've never been good at. I'm much more into the deep dive and deep conversations and one-to-one long-term relationships. I loved what you said about that previous archetype that we had, which is often the kind of wild spirit on the Free to Be You and Me album. And you might not be quite as old as I am.
I love that album.
There was one song about this young woman who could run just so fast, no man could keep up with her. She finally met her match. But I get chills when I think of that because that feels like the archetype that I was before I took on the mother mantle. And I really wanted to be a parent, to be a mom. Like, don't get me wrong. Okay, circling back around, Dr. Becky talks about we've given a lot of attention to that good mother part of us, right? But there's also this other part of us that might need a spa day, but might also just need to like dance to Grooves in the Heart. That came up for me on New Year's Eve. I was like, I need some delight, which is like a
I love
dance
that.
band.
Yeah.
We put on that song and we danced.
I love it. You move the energy, like you wanted to be your playful feminine self, and that's so important.
Yeah, just wiggling those hips, having kitchen dance parties.
Yes.
That's something that I often am reminding parents of younger kids is you don't need to remove yourself, and you can't safely remove yourself if you've got a baby that's like starting to get into everything and you can't take a 20-minute shower with the door locked, but you can put on some music and put your kid on your back and you can do a little weights routine or a dance party, or you can just laugh together. There are things you can do that are smaller that just wake up that part of you that you might miss a little.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't even realize that we miss it until that song comes on or an old story comes up like that you're reading to your kids. And the truth of who we are is still our own inner child, right? That's still who we are. Like I just saw this documentary about this couple. The husband is going through early onset of dementia, and they're both artists. So she's in the film business and he used to work for a magazine. And while his early onset of dementia has been really impacting his mind to do the everyday things, what's come up for him is art. He can create collages and like that makes him feel good. And that's the truth of who he is. He's still an artist, even if his brain is having this dementia. Like my son, the truth of who he is still the truth of his goodness and kindness and sweetness of everything that happened before his break. Like I see it, I know it. And when we practice mindfulness and metta, especially I've seen with parents.
Can you say what metta is?
Metta is a loving kindness prayer that we repeat 3 or 4 phrases that is all based around goodness. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you be healthy, and may you live with joy and ease. And so those are the phrases that I use. And when we do this in Sangha on Zoom and we do it together, then you go talk to your child, watch what happens. I am not kidding you. The interaction will be tremendously different. Your child will feel safe with you. They'll feel your energetic calmness, and you will find that heart connection again. But yeah, I know that we just have to sadly drink from a fire hose when the kids are so little too. I acknowledge that it is so much harder to do when the kids are little.
Yeah, and there are ways to do little things rather
Yes.
than nothing, right?
Thank you.
Rather
Yes, I
than
love
nothing.
that. What's your experience with Metta?
Well, my experience with Metta is amazing. I really encourage my students to find their own words by offering different phrases.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll do the same, but I've definitely found ways to make it bite size and the kind of thing like you could do in one breath. Breathing in love for me, breathing out love for you.
Beautiful.
And still, I know there's going to be objection and people holding on to the yeah buts. In my case, this doesn't apply, or that's nice for you, but what comes up often for me is the not enoughness.
Mm.
I will do a couple different practices throughout the day. Maybe I'll also go for a walk. But by the end of the day, there's this part of me that still is critical and feels
Mm.
like I haven't done enough self
Mm.
care.
Yeah.
So that's one that I work with a lot. And if you have any suggestions, I'm
Yeah. Yeah, I think that noticing that grasping, that resonates for me because that certainly happens to me as well sometimes where I go to bed and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't do enough." But there's always another day. I think it's like talking nicely to yourself, like how you would talk to your children,
yeah.
right? In your mind, like, "It's okay, honey. There's always another day. We're so lucky we get to go to sleep and nourish our bodies and then wake up and do it again the next day."
Yeah, it's the self-compassion.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how your lived experience led you to the awareness that everything is temporary and fleeting.
Oh gosh, impermanence is my buddy. Sometimes in the practice, this has really helped. When I sit in mindfulness, honestly, I sob. I actually I really sob and then I feel so much better. So I know that my emotions are temporary. And I rely on knowing that however I'm feeling, it's going to change. I
Mm.
know it will. Everything changes. We can count on everything to always change. It doesn't stay the same. It might feel like we're having Groundhog Day, but we're really not. In some cases, especially in parenting, I remember we feel like it's Groundhog Day. And I also remember those days of I couldn't wait to get home from work to all right, dinner, bed, bath, boom, so I can have my time, right? Yeah, just slowing down. I wish what I knew now, if I had known then, I would have slowed down and realized I still knew it was precious, but I really didn't know that it was precious.
Right. And other people telling you these moments are precious does
Yeah.
not help.
No, it doesn't. We have to go through it ourselves.
Yeah, and no matter how many times people come up to us and tell us that when we've got spit dripping off of us and our kid is screaming in our ear, it's not gonna help. Another thing that you wrote that I loved, I'm just gonna read the quote and then you can
Okay,
elaborate on it.
sure.
We can only change ourselves with brutal compassion and with an honest lens to see the truth. I loved that phrase, brutal compassion. And I think that ties into what you were saying earlier about you just really have to want it.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, you do. We just have to remember that I know that as women and as mothers, we give our compassion away all the time to others, but we forget ourselves. If we want people to treat us with the same compassion, we have to give it to ourselves. I know I've felt like I've been giving so much goodness out. Why isn't it coming back? And part of it is because I have to remember it for myself. It's weird. It's a weird human experience where we're so alone yet we're all interconnected. And the only thing we can change is ourselves. We do have to be the change we wish to see in the world. I want to be part of goodness. I don't want to contribute to stress and anxiety and meanness. even though some days I swear and get angry, but that passes.
But when you come back to your why,
Yeah.
it's about being part of the solution.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you be willing to tell us the story of the time you told your son that you would be divorcing his father?
Yeah. I actually think that I blocked it out. During that time, I thought that it was the right thing to do. So my son didn't even react. Okay, so imagine your child is not in his right mind. He's seeing and hearing, having hallucinations. He's really scared. He's in and out of hospitals, medication's not working. And you and your partner are in total fear, so much fear. And you're able to cope in different ways and show up in different ways and communicate with all of the medical staff differently. There's anger, there's sadness, there's loss, deep loss. And it's almost like having the death of a child, but they're still living. So it's this ambiguous grief
Mhm.
that's happening. So the best way to solve that, to get away from that grief, is to separate. I couldn't explain that to my son. I just knew that I had to protect myself in ways that I thought would be right. And turns out it wasn't the right path, I can thankfully say. And my husband and I made a big change and we moved um, from the Bay Area to Southern California. It freed us to get out of the house where all of that trauma happened, really helped our family start the next journey of healing. So my husband and I are, he's my best friend. We came through the fire together and we talk the way we never have talked before. I don't know if it's because of age, but really employing active listening is a really hard thing. And to allow each person to have their own journey and their own feelings it's not easy to do it when you're in it. But I'm so glad we stuck it out and we're together now 28 years. So I have to say that it's like the third chapter. I feel like it's the third marriage in the 28-year journey.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah. Shelley, what do you most want to be remembered for?
Mm. Oh, that's a hard question. Being kind and being insightful and a helper and somebody that is always trying to do her best.
What are your core values, especially related to parenting?
Yeah, core values, acceptance, compassion, connection, uh, courage, cooperation, altruism, autonomy, harmony. Yeah, I could go on and on. Yeah.
And you had written unconditional love above all.
Yeah, always unconditional love. And unconditional love is not an easy thing, especially in our society. What's really hard about unconditional love is that we forget and we don't know how to have conversations with our children about the soul. My teacher, Ram Dass, taught me what unconditional love is because he gave it to me. And with somebody, it's, I know everything about you and I love you anyway. And I don't care if you get that A. I don't care if you make mistakes. I care that you tried. I care that you're a good person and you have a kind heart and you have integrity. But do all the things and I'll love you anyway.
Unconditional love is this high bar, the ideal of being a parent, right? Especially a mother. But I come back to that idea of brutal compassion
Yeah.
because it is a lot harder than it sounds. And
Yeah.
it's not a Hallmark card.
No.
The crap hits the fan and you're still holding acceptance. Mhm.
It's all a practice. We can always begin again.
Yeah. Wake up and start again. And I'd love to end with a parenting memory that brings you joy.
I don't know. I love this memory, and it's before my daughter was born. I just remember when my son was little, and actually, I was pregnant with my daughter, and I was sitting on the couch with my little son, and he's probably 2. And I loved the Sandra Boynton board books. And I knew them by heart because we would read them all the time. So I put song to the words. So I would create different songs. And there was a barnyard book. And I would start to fall asleep while I was reading it. And he nudged me and he said, Mommy, why are you going ruh, 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 ruh? So I guess I was trying to stay awake, but my words just turned into bumbling mush. And it was just a moment of sweetness and fun for us. And I remember laughing about it, and it was really sweet. It's just a sweet memory that I cherish.
And I wonder if listeners will have the same reaction I had, which was having my own joy response, my own memory from a Boynton book arise from so many years ago.
Yeah, it's good to remember them.
Thank you for that. Holding the suffering and the joy at the same time feels really on the surface right now with the fires burning in California and global concerns about climate and about our safety, like bringing it back full circle to feeling safe enough.
Yes.
Do you have any final words that you'd like to share with parents before we wrap up?
That you're doing a great job. And I know we all know we need to be reminded we're all doing the best that we can and just keep on going and trust the process. So thank you so much, Kate.
And put yourself in
Put
the
yourself.
equation. If you're not
Yes.
putting yourself first, at least put yourself as part of the equation and love
Yes.
yourself as much as your kids. Shelley, I will have the links in the show notes, but it's always nice to just put your most easily remembered link so that people can hear it in case
Yes.
they're not looking at the show notes.
People can find me either on Substack or on my website. You can get to my Substack from my website, which is shelleykarpaty.com. It's SHELLEYKARPATY.com.
And
And
you
that's,
have a free writing workshop that you'd like to share.
yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, thank you. I have free guided meditations on Insight Timer, which you can get from my website. And I also have a free writing workshop to all of my subscribers once a month, where I provide a little bit of mindfulness and writing. You will be putting your oxygen mask on first and finding your creativity again.
Love that. Thank you so much, Shelley. Is there anything else before we end?
I'm just so grateful to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining Atypical Kids Mindful Parents podcast. I really appreciate you walking alongside me. Please subscribe to Atypical Kids Mindful Parents blog on Substack to enjoy monthly coaching and a community of parents who get it.